Yeah, Baba. Yeah, Baba. It's neat.
Hello, Temo fam, we are Minkpe mo fam, mo can bagmen any fame, oh, you will adon wa ake ofebe, Ningmene wa bana sanigba, hopefully, makwake manyama. Ikbe document fe na ngmene be oba fe part 2 wo ona boninchon ba ngmene ikeno konwe konwe ba Ngleshie Alata chieftaincy sanie manche yeli sanie niole once again in kebu wake gadangwe chemeni nye wo ye esani ame ya nukwali esani ame fe no nisa esani ame fe no nija look no kon ya no Ngleshie. And you can clearly tell, I can look, Mokontaone ye manche by force. J because eta we wa Ngleshie bi. She eta oni a benefit personally. Ke me fio komeu ni ne ke manche yeli ne na force ye Ngleshie. Ke di ete mi am ba benefit. And by benefit personally. Ni amen pushing on ya no. Ni esa ni wa yoman. Ni a few na kan. Esa ni wa yoman. Ni a few people ni yo me. I'm a personal interest. I'm a nibi na me tawo na me na ewo. I'm a fite ni ke ateno ni ekole afelo jogba na chong be papa no ni mo fe mo mi share. Ngleshie mamubi fe ba na se. Ni ole Keji oblanta ajibo. Ni o Ngleshie. Inoni ya no ona. Noni ya no ogmo twinshi no ba susunwe. Noni ya no oje sumo ni ekole bo osumo moko sane ewo. Bo onukpa ko ye no sumo esane. Manche ko ekole febo dromo wase ko be ko ne o. No ewo efe no ni yi efe no ni safe odomo eno odomo no mito no na onoli ake ofita eko na Ngleshie. Ni nyeti amekome ni nye ba I commentenshi ni nye ba bua ka ni bi nye be dwemo. You lots are just crazy. Pelensi association nye fita eko. Because ko fita Pelensi association eko ni lele osumo Ngleshie ni Ngleshie country no. No fe no ba nu e channel ne oba okosu ne ba dwen. Nka ken le ni femo. Ika ken ye chelo mi femo. Ika ken le Ngleshie sande femo. Ye Ngleshie no jimi. Shinka wolo motion. Inka video motion. It provided with audio. If you have any contrary evidence, present it. Kabano ba buaka ka nyeti amekume ken kwenye wonu pa ejinye benye banyemfe ni bi ni tafla cha nye bi atupemfo ebu efe. Abanye fe nye yawo. Awanye fenye yawo ni tuboboni last and video ni ole ganangbe Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs inke nakano sana fitele nakan pe ni actually Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs sana dwale po wo gandangbe bi wo nidi se na mo be no na mechu ejeme ameken drama ameken fiteni bi ameken petani bi aye. Ni ekome konwe iche mi bodo manye kon ni odaifio wilinchi. You failed. Clearly you failed as an acting president and Biane as the substantive president of the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs. You are failing because under your watch ganangme majiache masanjie Ejoko. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And one of the key reasons when it gandangbe majiachema sanjin get or worse has got to do with the regional house of chiefs. Nibo G president. Some of the corrupt deals ni ya no ejeme bo oye ya min 3D iche. Mik pabo fai. Ni ole beeshe. Ni you need to say to yourself, okay, you know what? I've had enough. So going forward there, machakengbe. Ta flat beke bi bio Jimmy. I am in no position whatsoever. Nima trouble no ni ofe taflache. Eko nche imo nane ni imo nane imba o emujinwo imba ogbe fitemo imba taflache ninka yemo shaba toye dabi impa. She so far the way ni run the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs say me kebwake efite woni bi fe boni sa ni liake afe Regional House of Chiefs say boni afe kejis majia chema sanjin toto wona jia ke gadang bebi ye ka ke ba shege me nye ba kwe ni ye yu anukwale ni nye fele bonisa ni nye ka anukwale agme sande egme. She sanjin ka ke ba shwege me nye ye po nye ta ye po sanjin ya Regional House of Chiefs ne ye fe 5 years ne doleje 10 years na takoi regional Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs say in case sanjin keje me 10 years atakoi ni no ni me una ta ehun ka ta ehun aye anukwale ka ta ehun no ni wo fe kadang me wo fe won na ke sane ya neken ke ka wo sane e kete neken kutumpo abla amale no juno ni chuoni ya Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs ni as long as ni Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs led by ni Odaifio Wilinchi ni jinungwa manche I may operate the way now me operator wama jina chema sanji ni yo gandang be shiko jiano esefon wanan to enjoy and it's about time that must stop ni keji anya pa be if you make say ni wo fe what petition government there bona what petition chieftaincy ministry the government there ni Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs say adwale because say no mo pay eketotomumba ekani samoba ekani fitemumba no yakeshwelemu ni mekoma Regional House of Chiefs can baha me wo no fite woni. Last week nkabo Ngleshie no ngendu Ngleshie mi no mba fe show e biye ngene show is unscripted because me ba kande ni mabo no pengbele ingma konoko ni kane wolo habo ni Regional House of Chiefs amesha Dr. Ashanku Bruce Quaye Prince the full name in boy imba ta video hu abo imba fe video ko ebie ni ba yue mo te shana ke musunchon e ja ke mokobi egbo. Look Jeremy moko e ja na sa ni Yesu yatimano ni amega yo ne bo adoma ngaleke Mose mlake sani wa twalete na egbo Yesu de gani ne ma shikon he who is without sin let him cast the first stone. Bomoni esha alo totomo boy here bokenkle ojenshi alo jenye ni otwa yone nyeke abo adwama bokenkle jenye no twalete so wafe wajani wasa. Look, Numu Aite Konko was not a perfect human being just like you and I. He was not perfect. In Yeshua aka fe ni bi pi aka wulomo ne sa na efi aka wulomo. But in care, nobody deserves to be shot in the head because mokonta une ye manche by force. Regardless of janimo eja alo e shanimo efe, that person does not deserve to be shot in the head. No one. Ni Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs ameni femo fita eko ni nakano ba ni amenjano na amenfeolo ni wakemba tabie icho ni Odaifio Wilinchi because he is the president. A action si face and a face every single action e ba take here e keno ya ke shwelemo baba gandang beshikon. A sani professor ni Odaifio Wilinchi e face shwake no fenu ne ba fe e ka basa fe mo ba shimon e ke twenjole baba shi ke e bale Ngleshie Alata sanene the way ni Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs ame handle le ike ame ni femo 3 hewo ni Ngleshie Alata sanjine ejwakwe ni ame yano na ame follow kije ba kaye ni nkan na kan document e anya search na afi. That was question number 7 here. Abi Regional House of Chiefs ake keji Dr. Prince Ashanku Brusque ke eba ni ame shale ke wo miye ani Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council bieji meni ame keleba aka ame shale lo aka ame manchene lo. Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs answer no. So ba bio yake Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs led by nona afe ni ni oda ife welenchi ele ekoyi. Look, video and habo money administer oath that oath ni Prince Ashanku Brusque swear money administer na kan oath hale Professor oda ife welenchi ni le administer na kan oath hale. So he is well aware of Naka induction there. And as a president, esani expect ake before neba swear moko, neba welcome moko mo ede ya ye manche na kanji boni mlake je minke ya kwa chieftaincy act mo fe mo e bagbe pan mo traditional council ni ba operate here ame fe ame ba e ka make ake wo manche na mu emi onye o induct moko keba Regional House of Chiefs without the blessing of Nakamo, a traditional council. You cannot. Kana kanye be mo fe mo ba nye teshimo na ya mo na swele in. Mo fe mo ba nye teshi na ya na swele in. But mo the traditional council so called about representer, you need their blessing. Amena sana make mo eba habu. Ake wo meni wo yo neke traditional council wo manchani watone nwe wanye shala awu ajame kone badumo wanajia. You cannot just obashamo kwa wo minkeke. Ni traditional council ne ba yi ame no ame joko no ame keko buake mene leji wo manche. Ora boni cho nikeje ba kaye to mo boni iwe nke buake question number 7. No ma ye intro mi pepe ya question kan video abiake an Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ame Kenya ke Dr. Prince Ashanku Brusque leji ame manchelo. Regional House answer no. Ni tabia ni bisan yake nwewo keji mo a traditional council ne ke eje ame ke je ame mancheni alo ame pe ne kwa aka ame mancheni mini no ninye domo ninye ke shale ame ke kotu sani ye je mo lo aye kwa atanko no na aye kwa atanko te fi ote na sha mo mene ni kojo danso ni jienyo Dansoman manche ke other members of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council amesiu Dr. Prince Ashanku Brusque amesiu Regional House of Chiefs ke National House of Chiefs for fraud. Now ame fe ko put ame together ame 20 ni kojo danso ni jienyo ni ji Dansoman manche le enya me here le me 19 ni ame okay let me break it down this way. Ngleshie Alata Regional Council Traditional Council ame membership ame ye kome 35 nyuma ete ke enumo botwe ame yi kome nyuma ete ke enumo neke nyuma ete ke enumo ne only the 18 no ba form quorum. Come back here. You need 18 members out of the 35. Ni ameba form quorum. Now, out of 35, may come 20. So that should tell you right there that is majority. 20 Ekome 20 efe ekome na mesiu Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye, Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs, National House of Chiefs. Amesiu neke mene fe. Ejake amengo no. Ake Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye, Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Engo no. Ake Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye. Ji amemanche. Ngote fiote na shale. No animi keba ke komo he. You need 18 members out of the 35 members in your Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council to form a quorum. In this case, you have 20. So keji Ngleshie Alata ekpe aka abafe meeting. You have 2 more people than required to actually function as a traditional council. In a kekbemene led by ni kojo danso ni jenyo ni Dansoman manche amefe kome na ama siu neke induction ne te no. Now 19 members ameha ni kojo danso ni jenyo ni Dansoman manche ameha le power of attorney ne nyi ameye nye doma menajian ni initiate neke lawsuit ni initiate ni mene obabotemi ni wakwano ni yomi obabotemi ni wakwano ni yomi. Now tumomoni iwe na meji menime yo neke lawsuit ne no kenkle tumoboni nkebwe plaintiff number 1 nkebo but ni kojo da le no ji plaintiff because power of attorney from the rest of the members ni kojo dan so ni ji enyo na ma na edumo ni ashaku ayiku ni ji eten ni taki owo ni ji edwe ni odamete ni ji kenkle leji bosua fise manche kenche lodugba anyege kiami na tete oko ni ji kenkle eye glefe Dansoman amache mefe na komle ajaduma ni ji kenkle kofe manye ni kwaku wia ni ji edwe oba akrowa manche ni kofi lantai ni ji enyo domi abra jaseche ni buenote baku ni ji kenkle langma manche ni oshiu dade ni ji edwe olebu oshuma manche na dede sampa ni ji kenkle domi fase manye na sekua adanse koche ni ji kenkle manye na ode ni ji enyo ni afua ni ji pao afua ma manche nana tambia ni ji edwe over ne kenche egba odubaka kemi ni kojo minsa mankralo na day album the first le kegbe mene fe 19 ni ke oke ni kojo danso ni jenyo fita ya me 20 mi ke wake ame normal if you 2 more than the required quorum keji Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council tashi so majority of Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ame fi Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye say. So when you have a majority of the traditional council, a majority of the traditional council, ni ame supporti Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye a candidate upon what grounds? Ni o dai fi welenchi. Impa, maba. Na mama see you Inchanya bombo. First defendant, Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye. Second defendant, J.N.A. Lomo, the acting registrar of Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Third defendant, Mr. Enoch Ado, the registrar, Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs, Dodowa. Fourth defendant, the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs, also House of Chiefs, Greater Accra Lencha Asule. And then fifth defendant, the National House of Chiefs, Menshia Kumasi. Now, an action having been commenced against you by the issue of this writ by the above named plaintiff, you are hereby commanded that within 8 days after service of this writ, on your inclusive of the day of service, you do cause an appearance to be entered for you, and take notice that in default of your so doing, judgment may be given in your absence without further notice to you. Eneboli dane fe fitai no jinoni unane. Now, mini jinoni, I'm a statement of claim ke no mene nke ba ke mene no jinoni wa ba tun. I'm a statement of claim maabo ni okwe. Ka gbina obakwe ni bi na meta wo hun. Come on. Now, again, wherefore, plaintiffs claim against the defendants jointly and severely for the following reliefs. A declaration that the said order dated the 29th day of April 2024, His Lordship Justice Aite Amatete sitting as the High Court judge, granted in favor of the first defendant, the then applicant, an order against the second defendant, compelling her to endorse the CD forms of the first defendant's CD forms, and have same forwarded to the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs within 14 days of onward transmission to the National House of Chiefs, was obtained through fraudulent misrepresentation. Kenya ba akaye Regional House of Chiefs said ni afese che na bia mesani ye no ne woni amesha Dr. Ashanku Bruce Quaye. One of the reason na me akeji ake because Kenya ba akaye an Ngleshie Alata be ekpene lo no and in minutes lo no she question e ko na bia maka na me tuna kan nuchimo because of a court order lo ameka yes in Canada can court order abu except I get to obey you and I can video me and I can court order lenche appeal ye ni na can sani ayeko. So based on I can court order appeal alone, Regional House of Chiefs said they have no right whatsoever because sani ayeko e court atanku. Na can order appeal, je appeal mo pe appeal, but I file for a motion for a stay of execution. So nuko ni I file for a stay of execution against Nakania. Onyo yano no execute. Onyo yano no Nakania achuni. Ona. Now, I'm a first statement of claim in Chono Gwake. I'm in Kano Gwake. Nakan order ni justice. Aite ama tete in favor of the first defendant. In this case, Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye. And then I can order through fraudulent means. Nichwanke a chok no. There were misrepresentations. Yegbeno ni aloni bi ni teno no woni jeje kwe ne grant na kan order. There were misrepresentations, fraudulent misrepresentations. B, a declaration that the said order dated the 29th day of April 2024 by His Lordship Justice Aite Amatete sitting as the High Court judge, granted in favor of the first defendant, the then applicant, an order against the second defendant, compelling her to endorse the CD forms of the first defendant's CD forms, and have same forwarded to the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs within 14 days for onward transmission to the National House of Chiefs, is null and void and of no effect. Okay, nakan order ni wache justice Aite Amatete ke nakan order abulake esa no kona akon. It is null and void and esa na dumono na ketwoni because I make cable ya me first point time yake ya me susumomi I obtain like an order through fraudulent misrepresentation. C, a declaration that the entire process leading to the registration and induction of the first defendant in the National Register of Chiefs is tainted with fraud and procedural breaches and therefore void and of no effect. Okay, keji akegbe wo National House of Chiefs register me gbeno ni acho ni egbe baje National House of Chiefs me eji ka fraud miniji fraud gbe ojotwa fraud ojotwa acho ojotwa gbeno ke gbe konkromene sano ni egbe ya je National House of Chiefs fraud allo fraud me we ojocho e call fraud in this context je ojocho ani but fraud right beno na atwon je gbagba ni. Now D, an order setting aside the said order dated the 29th day of April 2024 by His Lordship Justice Ayite Amatete, sitting as the High Court judge, granted in favor of the first defendant, that then applicant, an order against the second defendant, compelling her to endorse the CD forms of the first defendant's CD forms and have same forwarded to the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs within 14 days for onward transmission to the National House of Chiefs. Akekenye ba aka here. Nomie order ni judge granted kon ni a compelling registrar ya Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs say kone forward Dr. Prince Ashanku Busquay a form say kaya national kenye ba aka na judge anaka order hu amen we bia ke amen sumo ni judge ne ba ata ne kesa ne na kan order ni aha ni no ewo na forward a form secretary national na kan order hu asset no aside. And once again like I said keji mlanchu ni ojogba we should not even get here because na kan order to mobeni nkobwe appeal na apply for a stay of execution against na kan order pending the appeal. So keji mlanchu ni ojogba ya Ghana ni Regional House of Chiefs amen yemlano ni amen chuni boni asani amen chuni this lawsuit would not have even been necessary. Because I mean that Dr. Prince Ashanku Busquay, I'm a forward a document kaya national because case say a appeal. Now yeko I came again the next couple of weeks. Then abache. An order setting aside the entire process leading to the registration and induction of the first defendant in the National Register of Chiefs on grounds of fraud and procedural breaches. Once again, ake naka no na TFA achog ben papa no beniato nikeji aba shamoko keba Regional House of Chiefs allo aba forward the egbe ke national na kala wo register me gbei ni achon na kan achon na ke chon na kan nuchumo ni eshe Dr. Prince Ashanku Busquay no amechon na kan gbei no ni ame use wo jocho agbe fraud. Me kwa if I keji fraud in this context in ke bagam mi odogba nye kami nye chwami ni mali akoni next time e kemi kan de mali boni ma useful. Eke an order for perpetual injunction restraining the first defendant from holding himself or acting in the capacity as the president of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Once again, JJAM order koni achi Dr. Prince Ashanku Busquay na ake ekache Ngleshie Alata manche ni ekachu enuchumo ake Ngleshie Alata manche ekache ake Ngleshie Alata manche ni ekachu ni ake Ngleshie Alata manche. An order for perpetual injunction restraining the second, third, fourth, and fifth defendants from ever recognizing or taking any administrative instructions or acknowledging the first defendant as duly registered member and president of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Once again, many Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs register ni your Regional House of Chiefs say register ni your Ngleshie Alata Regional House of Chiefs say stop ame echi ame fegbe ake ameke Dr. Prince Ashanku Busquay akachu noko ameka accordile any sort of noko ameka nale ameka yosele akeleji Ngleshie Alata manche ni ameka la akachu ni hu akenaken keji ebale wojin femo kenibiye ameka yosele akeleji Ngleshie Alata manche ni ame ba fe woloko yale ni ebanye domono ne kake based on wolu na ame fe hale beleji Ngleshie Alata manche nakanjino ni ame bioye nekenine. Now an order for perpetual injunction restraining the defendants, their agents, privies, assigns, and all persons deriving title from them from taking any administrative step to enter the name of the first defendant into the National chieftaincy bulletin. Ake nekegbe mene fe ninche Ngleshie Alata traditional council registrar, regional house of chiefs registrar, the regional house of chiefs said excuse me get me. The regional house of chiefs said ameka fe noko ni angmegbe alo ame push noko ni bani Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye leji first defender anytime no one first defender until leji mona refer to ni egbe by a national bulletin emi ake leji Ngleshie Alata manche adeti at astute legal legends all chambers ame gbe jeme abeka near Peace FM Accra. I'm a phone number. Assign neke ni this second day of April 2025. So last week, ni assign neke wolone. I'm a lawyer egbe yeshishin egbeji Christian Akwesi Boame. This read was issued by Christian Akwesi Boame Esquire, for whose address una nakandi BFA. Now, so this is the first part. Now, mini jini bi ni ame avero mini jini bi ni ame dumono ni ame kenchu ame nuchumo amakande mahabu koni okwe jemehun. Now, the plaintiff is the chief of the Dansoman divisional stool of the Ngleshie Jamestown Paramount Stool and a member of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council and resident of house number 1 near Danso Street, Dansoman Manche Palace, Old Dansoman Road in the Greater Accra region of the Republic of Ghana. The plaintiff brings this instant action for himself and of the lawful as the lawful attorney. Mind you, 19 and na fe ame grantile na kan power of attorney ni enye echu na kan nuchumo. For ni ayinsa Sasaku the third, ni Ashraku Ayiku the third, ni Kojo Mensa the first, na Teteoko the first, na Abakwano the first, ni Odamete the first, ni Taki Owo the fourth, ni Kofi Lante the second, ni Kwaku Wia the fourth, Nana Tambia the fourth, na Komle Ajaduma, ni Buenote Bakun the first, na Dede Abla the first, ni Okwim Adama the first, ni Afua the seventh, Afuaman, na Sekua Adanse Koche the first, na Dede Sampa Domi Fiase Manye, na Ode the second, and ni Oshu Dade the fourth, all of who are members of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. The plaintiffs averse that they are all members of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council and brings this instant action as chiefs and members of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council. I'm in trouble no kwake. I'm a fita Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ni ame kegbe pamo kashishinumo ekome ni ame keneke lawsuit ne ebane. Now, the plaintiffs aver that as members of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council and brings this instant action as chiefs and members of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council. They have both legal and beneficial interest in the said traditional council, which they have the absolute right to protect. Akani members yabe ya Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council yamlad bena ameye senamo yegeme nino ewo esani ame protect na kan senamo minpa yefai ene benyeli achono ko transliteration ni bi ko me ka o jeblofo em no kan bagan mi boli sano translate the literally ko mo translation no ba nyo gba mi odugba so min try ona boni chon they have a beneficial interest in the said traditional council, which they have the absolute right to protect. Ni chwake je members keke jame she akani members jame ye na kan council ye mlag bena ame ye egbe ni ame protect or council agbene wu ake members say ame ye se na moku ye council wu ni no wu esa na ame fe mini ame fan. The plaintiff avers that this instant action has been brought as a matter of necessity because of the unlawful conduct and activities of the defendants, which has affected them as members of the traditional council, and seeks to deny them of their rights and interest as members and chiefs of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Ameke sane nemba eja ke no ni ete no yem lak befang be eje no koni asani eya no ni ake members ni yo jeme na kan no egba amena eni ame interest ni yo Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ke ame right ame gbena ni yo jeme no agba na kan no na because no ni te no ya ame susumu mi eje mla gbena. The first defendant is a Ghanaian resident at an unnamed house at Mamprobi, Accra, in the Greater Accra region of the Republic of Ghana, and hold himself up as the paramount chief of Ngleshie Alata, Jamestown Paramount Stool, and the president of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. So in a self-explanatory, anytime no banners first defendant, Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye, Legimone Sanyayu Akele Eko Ehehi Aken Leji Ngleshie Alata Manche. The second defendant at the time of filing this instant suit claims to be the acting registrar and administrative head of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council, appointed by the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs to the office of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council to ensure the proper administrative running of the office in accordance with the Chieftaincy Act 2008 and other required rules and practices. Okay, second defendant biamina me filing the lawsuit ne ekele G registrar ni Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs engole alo amekele eba ni eba chuni ye Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council koni amekwe ni bi arani ojugba. The third defendant at the time of filing this instant suit claims to be the acting registrar and administrative head of the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs, appointed by the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs to the office of the said Regional House of Chiefs to ensure the proper administrative running of the office in accordance with the Chieftaincy Act 2008 and other required rules and practices. Once again, third defendant mino asule ake eke legi registrar ni your Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs ni Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs etole ake einjeme ni echuni ojugba. The fourth defendant is a body established as a chieftaincy institution under the Chieftaincy and under the Constitution and Chieftaincy Act to perform both judicial and administrative functions within the jurisdiction of the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs. So Regional House of Chiefs as a body le asiune. The fifth defendant, a body established as a chieftaincy institution under the Constitution and Chieftaincy Act to perform both judicial and administrative functions at the national level. The plaintiffs, number 11. The plaintiffs averts that by an application for judicial review, which suit number dated the 12th day of December 2023, the first defendant sought an order for mandamus directed against the then registrar of the Ngleshie Alata, compelling her to endorse his chieftaincy declaration CD forms and forward same to the Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs in case with suit number GJ02422024. So once again, Kenya Bakaye no junoni Regional House of Chiefs said I can lawsuit no junoni ame ni nation na ameke no junoni ame domo ni amechu no chumo ni amechu eha Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye ame court ye bi ake first defender ni Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye 12th day of December 2023 ni seek for an order from the court. Number 12, the plaintiff further avers that on the 29th day of April 2024, His Lordship Justice Aite Amatete, sitting as the High Court judge, granted in favor of the first defendant, the then applicant, an order against the second defendant, compelling her to endorse the first defendant's CD forms and have same forwarded to the third defendant, into parentheses, Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs, within 14 days for onward transmission to the National House of Chiefs. Nakai Saniani a year, Mandemo Sani Wache Prince Ashanku Quaye a year, Justice Aite Amatete, 29th day of April 2024, order ba, order based on Nakai Sani ni a compelling registrar ne ake ebomode ni forward the form say ke regional house of chiefs koni amehu amekwa na mbafe na ame forward ke national. Number 13. The plaintiffs contend that in the said suit, the second defendant, being the registrar of Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council, was sued in an official capacity. There was an audio to that effect where ni biamini a challenge registrar ne ye Ngleshie Alata ni ye ke ba kai Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye we ne ke la ke esumo ne ke ba wo no komisha ba sule in Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye ke la ke e ya no ne e ka worry e ba take care of it kenye ba kai. Yes. The plaintiffs further contend that the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council, as a legal person and whose members are directly affected by the outcome of the said ruling, was not a party to the suit. Ake Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ake ni sanene ko ame ekwe bi ame ni sanene ya no ame ebemi aka ame wo mi no ame ebemi ni ame no shishi na ke ake mo e ba ne ba ye manche ye Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. So te if you attend a file on a lawsuit eko ni ame ebemi na kenjuno na ame chon. The plaintiffs averred that established procedure for the registration of chiefs as guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution and the Chieftaincy Act 2008 Act 759 and same require the registration process to be commenced by the first defendant obtaining the CD form, the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Number 16. The plaintiffs averse that upon issuance of the CD forms by the second defendant as the registrar of Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council, receipts are issued from the registry of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council. Akekeji registrar ne fill CD form say alo process CD form say ne ke hamoku ni mo kaya na register le I issue a receipt bona ake why issue ne ke forms ne bona ne ke chieftaincy declaration forms ne why issue ni wa ke hamo no receipt ni yo no ne. The plaintiffs contend that there is no record at the registry of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council of any CD forms being issued to the first defendant. Shimon ke ebale CD form say ni akeha watche Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye Dr. Leno Kote Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ameni bi amiye noko kula bemi ni chon ake I issue neke forms I issue CD forms ke Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye over the bonu nchijoduba. Now 16 and 17 16 chono kwake keji I issue CD forms ke hamukwe but I keep on record on aboni chon receipt I keep on record ake o neke gbiye wa issue neke CD forms ne ashi machine 17 chono kwake keji okwa Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council a record me na kan no kokla abemi ni chon ake I issue nakainoko ke Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye ke Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye enye CD forms ne ke CD forms say eje Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council nakain CD forms say nakaino ebe am records me ake I issue nakain CD forms say ke je Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council over ne kekimi. The plaintiff further states that the lay-down procedure requires that when the forms are completely filled, they are returned to the Traditional Council. And in this instant case, the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council. I mean, chono kowe koake neke chieftaincy declaration form ne keji affiliate na issue receipt na keep record there. Esani akeba Traditional Council fe ni Traditional Council fe ayo da say ake why issue neke CD forms kaya ashimashi ne kaya regional. The plaintiff states that considering the hierarchical structure of the National House of Chiefs, with the fourth defendant, Regional House of Chiefs and Traditional Council, the process of registering starts from the Traditional Council and not the Regional House of Chiefs. So I mean tana make no kwake anywhere 18 back ni kanye ni chwake I mean tana make no kwake yeah, Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye no me ni a feeling I can form akaba ni Traditional Council ba kwe Honorable Ncho, akebani traditional council bakwe na me ba yoda si ake okay I feel in the form eyamuku no jino ne 19 chono kwake. The plaintiff states that considering the hierarchical structure of the National House of Chiefs, the four defendants, regional House of Chiefs, and traditional councils, the process of registration starts from the traditional council and not the regional House of Chiefs. Ake keji okwe biamini nkane na kan search na afia bo nkebo the same thing there. Lawsuit ne confirm yabo. Keji okwe the way ni CD form sane travel the way ni esani eyale esani adjesishi keje traditional council ni mo eyodan dani eyayeko keje traditional council kekete regional keje regional kekete national si onye ni no ko be traditional council ake afili ne ke CD form say habo ame be receipt ko ame traditional council bi ede nche akeba cho ame ake neke no koji noni afe keke no be na ba na no esha regional from regional no akwa ni bi ame no akete national je na kanji boni eyale sana agency traditional council ke traditional council ngono na me kwe ni no fe no eja nka me forward kete regional nkwe ame correspond with the traditional council ame verify ake document say can be a fair process if actually no fe no your jogba ni sane ko beni aye ke me forward kete national na kanji boni asana me fe she wacha me ka wanye me na me file ne ke lawsuit ne nke wa ke na kanoko eya no. Now, the plaintiffs aver that after the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council has to receive the plaintiffs aver that after the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council has received and approved the forms and the attachment, it would forward them to the Regional House of Chiefs with a covering letter and the certified copies of minutes of the Traditional Council meetings in which the said CD forms were approved. Question number 7 biamina fe search ni abi regional house ake and the traditional council ni eke Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce ba ake ashale loe na ameka da abi the next question na abi ji ake keji traditional council ni keleba meeting me ni afe nakai no ye na agree aka kelaba I may provide nakai minutes from the meeting here no ni plaintiffs na nke wa ake nakanji boni is afiole ake keji Ngleshie Alata biye I may receive CD form say allow traditional council receive CD form say na me kwemi na me approve ake no fe no ni yo me eja ame ke cover letter ba agbe ke ka agbe ne minute say meeting na me fe bi ame ni ame ni ne share ne ke CD form say no ni ame ngono ake no fe no eja ame fa ame pene aka ame manchene e CD form say na affiliate information fe you correct na ka minute say nwe aka gbi oyi na ka ya Regional House of Chiefs The plaintiffs avers that a search conducted at the registry of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council indicates that no such CD forms of the first defendant has ever been received nor approved by the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Plaintiffs say wake ame search Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council was there ever a time ni afe meeting ni akaneke CD forms ne ba ni ame kwe na ame yose ake no fe no eja wa mancha ni wa wu le no egbe yo no information fe correct lo na kan ame kwe Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ame search fe ame na ke na kan no kote no eje me ame na kula ke na kan no kote no obabio yake Regional House of Chiefs mini potenji ame no chumo. The plaintiffs further avers that the purported CD forms returned from the Greater Accra Regional Council, in addition of it not being dated without the name of persons making the report, the absence of official stamps of the person making the report, and signature of the register of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Area did not emanate from Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. No me chono kwake CD form say ni so called afili ake Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council na ake the Regional House of Chiefs say na me kwano money fili egbe no official stamp of Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council egbe no ona na me ka I obtain the kendi be through fraudulent means mo gbebe no ni amekwa nwe eje Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council. Mind you, ame ka ebu ake ame takoshi ame receive go CD form square ni ame takoshi ni ame ba kwe ni ame ba pene ake no ni ya no alo CD forms de correct ni no ake ya. The plaintiffs repeats paragraph 17 to 23 and states that without the above stated procedure, the first defendant cannot have his purported CD forms endorsed by and forwarded to the fourth defendant in order for the third defendant to work on it for onward delivery to the fifth defendant. So once again, okay, keji ne kedi bi neni kanye fe acho mi benuele bekokula be ni Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye esani CD forms ko yehe ne esani afili na kaya regional ni ka kete regional ni regional hu kabaya national esani na ka no kokula ya no because process me na chon ni mogbe ya geo national na register ale nege process di ne fe achon ko fe mi. The plaintiffs further states that there are no evidence of minutes or resolution by the members of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council authorizing the then registrar of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council to endorse the CD forms of the first defendant and for onward submission to the fourth defendant. Okay, ame kwa me ni bi ame fe ame na kekpe koklate no ya Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ni ame pene ake CD forms ne amengo no aka no fe no ni yo no eja leji wo manche CD form say ni yo here work pene no akaya regional ni regional unkaya national naka no go be meeting kokula ba ni I take down minutes e kokula be ame minutes ame pe mi fe no kokula be mi nakan ne wo nakan no eja if I nyege kiami boli allergy season is start. The plaintiffs averse that the first defendant deliberately disregarded the procedure required at the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council in his quest to have his name registered in the National Register of Chiefs and chose to proceed to mislead the Honorable Court to grant him an order to have the then registrar endorse his purported CD forms. It's a mistake and amounts to procedural impropriety. Anytime no back on the lawsuit, a lot of mistakes grammatically nibi baba so if you're going to name can ekome ball mean ta say it sound good you to me grammatically sometimes ekome ball eho so I mean chono kwake Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye neke procedure ne fe echo fe mi ni egbe yaje national ni ya mesusu momie Elaka court America misled the Honorable Court to grant him an order. Okay, I mean Elaka court because nibi amina sane chon no court bulletwe ni sani court bulletwe is a mistake and amounts to procedural impropriety. Okay, based on that ba fe no ni esa yemlag be family ufane keke. The plaintiffs averse that per the procedure provided by the Constitution and the Chieftaincy Act, the first defendant's right to have his purported CD forms endorsed by the second defendant has not accrued for such an order to be made against the second defendant. Okay, kejo kwa Chieftaincy Act the way ni bi yale shukwu enaka order ni a force register ni echu Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye a CD form say ni esa ni shukwe ka okwa Constitution like a Chieftaincy Act based on the breaches na fe procedural breaches na fe ni te no esa ni shukwe a grantor like an order. The plaintiffs contend that the conduct of first defendant in sidestepping the procedural requirements of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council constitute an act of procedural impropriety and an act of undermining the statutory provisions. Ake nekedi bi ne fe ni achono ni Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye chife akpasashi ne chono eji noko ni esa ye mlagbe fangbe ye ni bi ni aka function aka keji mokonta oni afile CD forms ona bonincho na aka ya na register la aka manche ni bi na aka tono aka toshi mla na aka woshi aka sani acho na ka ni bi efe no acho na ka ni bi efe no na ka no eja. The plaintiffs averred that the purported first defendant CD forms returned from the fourth defendant and having not emanated from the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council and which the court had ordered the then registrar to endorse, same is not valid. Ake ni acho ne ke gbeno na efe na ke fe ni ne na ke CD form say esa na here awomi because acho gbepapa no the lay down procedures ne esa na acho no na ke obtain na kan ni ye je no acho no esa ni po akọ no kula po. The plaintiffs state it will be an affront to the principles of fairness and just for an order to be granted on the basis of a forged and unlawfully obtained CD forms, and thus such order must be deemed to be null and void. Ake ejino konike neke CD forms ne aye awomie be ache mla yin atoa mla ni ake function ake keje bale neke CD forms ne fili mo achono na ake fe be ache na ke mla yin atoa. The plaintiffs state that the decision to transmit CD forms of chiefs within traditional areas is the duty or function of the traditional council taken by its members in traditional council meetings and not the duty of the then registrar. Akeneke CD forms ne keji akabaya regional alo akabaya ekwe traditional council meaning na ke manche yo ama menu chumoni ameni sana me yawomi akeneke CD forms ne nin papani CD forms de wangono. CD forms de wamanche ni yo no le noji wamanche. CD forms de information fe ni yo no noji correct. Keka ma menu chumoni. She je registrar kometo onye ke wale. Afterward the CD forms kaya regional house of chiefs. Alo any isani ekeya. The plaintiffs further contend that the then registrar of the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council cannot therefore be sued or compelled under the circumstances to endorse and submit CD forms of the first defendant to be awarded to the fourth defendant when the plaintiffs, as members of the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council, have not received and approved the said CD forms. Once again, I can register ebe wale ni eba fili forms ko ne kebaya ni Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council amengo ko amekpeneko ame kwako form na me ba approve na me form me ba stamp no aka olele form ne wo manchele no egbe yo no ni bi efe na me no correct le register e be na kan wale ni e ba chu na kan chumo ni Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council ame ni ne share na kan form se no na me ba kwa no ni ame ba stamp no fe no ni yo no aka jale nini dani akaya. The plaintiffs aver that the CD forms purportedly returned from the third defendant was not issued from the Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council, but the first defendant is believed to have connived with some officers of the third defendant to have his name registered from the falsified CD forms, which was purportedly returned to the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council. Okay, neke CD forms ne ya me susumo mi ka kwe nibi ni yo no fe amale nibi so yo no ni first defendant niji Dr. Prince Ashanku Bruce Quaye ka me come ya regional house of chiefs ni amefe icho nkpa kome ni amekwe ni noko ni neke noko ne ni esa ni amechini ni niete. The plaintiffs further contend that the first defendant's purported CD forms, which he claimed to have been returned from the fourth defendant to the Ngleshie Alata Jamestown Traditional Council, are no minutes nor resolutions for the fourth defendant attached to the said CD forms. Once again, ball in lawyer say ball in no. Okay, neke CD forms ne. No kokula be ni Ngleshie Alata traditional counselor. Chonga Ngleshie Alata traditional counselor. Ame tashi na ame dwe na ame pai na ame ngono ake lele no fe no eshe ni wake ya. The plaintiffs avers that in addition to the defendant's acts of procedural impropriety and forgery, there is a pending case before the judicial committee of the fourth defendant in which they are challenging the validity of the purported nomination, selection, election, and installation of the first defendant as paramount chief of Ngleshie Alata, Jamestown Traditional Council. Benyena. Nyo Davio Wilinchi. The Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs. Amen chono kwake. Sane yejeme. Le Regional House of Chiefs says sane yejeme. Ni neke manchene. Ni Dr. Prince Ashanku Buskwe kaye ye. A challenge na ke manche. Yelie. Ye Regional House of Chiefs say. Ni ye ko sane atanku. Ganangbe. Je ni tete. Ni chongbeke gbonyo. Ni kemba tabiye. Bedane ke ye kwa nubai. San Regional House of Chiefs says sane yejeme. Aye ko atanku. No ate fiote ni nya forward your mo gbe ka ya iko ni tomoboni ntwa ni adama lache video bia me video ha bo ni o da fio welenchi no no shala wo mi keji nye no po nye sane ni nye nyumwaji anu kwale ni nye ke jela sane ye manche e ka mini nu chumo nyechu e ka mini nu chumo nyechu. The plaintiff avers that the third defendant, being very much aware of the pendency of such case before the judicial committee of the fourth defendant, but failed to disclose same in the report attached to the CD forms before forwarding same to the National House of Chiefs. Me kebu akenkelo Regional House of Chiefs. Look, Ghana maybe nyeleroku. Maybe. Look. No ni ya no. Well, Regional House of Chiefs ama me ha kan ajo, ikandang me no ajo. Saniwa file a petition. They had the audacity to shut the traditional council down. Amen. I think we should file a petition to the presidency. Ni what Regional House of Chiefs I shut it down closely. Say no more bay. Ni so am fitio. Okay. Ni am forward neke forms neke national. Ameke national bi ake monigbe yo no ake manche esane ye bi ani wonye. Men challenge e manche yeli na eke yo men challenge ameke national bi na kai. Regional na ameke form say ya national ameke national bi ake ashimashi na egbe yo no e manche yeli a challenge sane ye. Ni chieftaincy act ni sen kan de bi abo eke before na abaye moko awo mi ake manche esana fe hwu ake ena atole weku na asana etole traditional area na asana atole ya alo atole ye mo fe mo ehia wo mi eye chieftaincy act ni wokeji moko ni weku ni to kan traditional area ekola wo komie ye begbe ni ye forward ye egbe ke ya eko ni o dai fi owelenchi ma ba. I wish New Difio Willinchi background me that audience. Ninkala nasanigba ye ni tete TV. Koni neke questions na ni bio ni mingbla mo ni yo here neke ba because me inu shishi iche inu shishi ni bi ekome it is black and white. The plaintiffs further state that the conduct of the first defendant does not only amount to forgery and procedural impropriety, but also the first defendant obtained the said ruling and court order dated the 29th day of April 2024 by fraudulently misrepresenting to the Honorable Court. Okay. Benoni Dr. Prince Ashanku Buskwe chon neke nana ken order a chong bekpani fraudulent. In this case, and like ojo try. I believe I think there should be another word outside because ojo try still a sorrow yen to me to like monitoring noko like shikasane noko on aboninchon. I believe there should be another gun word for fraud where ni je shika ojo try. You understand what I'm saying? Because that is what this I don't know. Ake benone chon ni ekanana kan order egba court to anukwali. Emale court we nuewo ni ekana nakan order bon emale court we gamashi eteshi nge court we particulars of fraudulent misrepresentation ole in fair agema fe part 2 she ole minkwe how many pages is it 1 2 3 4 okay I think we should do a part 2. Bona, I think we should do a part 2. Koni video say akajeke. So lenoko. Aninka bawabiye. Wa mahabo part 2. Wa I'm breaking it down. Particulars of fraudulent misrepresentation. Bona bonichon. I'm breaking it down more. Noni e woni ya mesusu momie achog bekpakpa no ni akena neke ordane ni numwe egbe ya the regional house of chiefs now me forward ikete I'm breaking it down more in kabaka afe to mono no ba nu it's a repetition of noni onubi and lawyer say na ka me feel so any war what fail part 2 bona boninchon so war in part 2 baba makane no me fe ni magbla mi fe mahabo ekon bona so to boni nkabo part 1 ne Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council 20 members out of the 35. I may sue Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye. Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council Registrar. Registrar ne your Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs. The Greater Accra Regional House of Chiefs said denche we I may sue like an entity. Then the National House of Chiefs we I may sue National House of Chiefs. Ejake beno na mecho ni I may handle Ngleshie Alata chieftaincy dispute ne ke beno na mecho ni amefe wojin ke Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye ke gbeno ni Dr. Prince Ashanku Quaye e present documents ko me ke ni bi ko me ne ke te jameni na ke no te no ni anya ashale ya mesusu momie eje gbepapa ni amechi mo na me yo Ngleshie Alata Traditional Council amengo hono akele eje abemanche wo mabo part 2 of am lawsuit o you will don wa ade nche nyumba job ngbe eji ni tete obo obi ashon wo ba pe bye bye.
Yeah, Baba, it's neat. Them say you want to chop my